Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial of how to cut a two-piece trouser and shirt. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. So to start, I'm going to take the full length of my trouser, which is 40 inches, and I'll add 2 inches for folding allowance, making it 42. After getting the length of your trouser, there are two methods of folding your trouser or getting the required material for your trouser. First is your hip circumference divided by 4 plus your front crotch extension plus your sewing allowance. So my hip circumference is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 inches. So that 10 inches plus my front crotch extension. To get your front crotch extension is your hip circumference divided by 16. So mine is 2.5 plus 1 inch for sewing allowance. So I have a total of 13.5 inches. Another method is to go ahead to use your thigh or lap measurement divided by 2 plus 2 inches. My thigh or lap measurement is 25.5 inches divided by 2. I have 12.75. So that 12.75, you're going to add extra 2 inches, making it 14.75. So this is how to get the required fabric for cutting your trouser. So whichever method that works for you, go ahead to use that. So next, I'll mark my shoulder to hip point. To get your shoulder to hip point is 10 inches from your waistline. After marking that, I'm going to draw a line at that point. So the next step you want to take is to get your crotch line. So there are also two methods. The first method is to go ahead to divide your hip by 4 inches. So my hip is 40 divided by 4, it will give me 10, which is exactly my hip measurement. The next method is to go ahead to sit on a flat or hard surface, measure from your waist all the way down to the flat surface which you're sitting on. So after that, I have 11 inches which I'm making use of. So next is to get your thigh line or your lap line. Now to get that is 2 inches or 3 inches away from your crotch line. So I'll mark 2 inches after that. So here's my hip line, here is my crotch line, and here is my thigh or lap line. So I'll just go ahead and outline this. So the next measurement you need is your hip circumference divided by 4. My hip is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 plus 1 inch sewing allowance, which will give me 11 inches, and I'll go ahead to extend this measurement at the upper part of my waistline. Now I'll go ahead to draw this out. So the upper part of the trouser will be serving as the waistline for this trouser. Next, you want to mark your front crotch extension, and to get that is your hip circumference divided by 16, which will give me 2.5. Another method is to divide your hip by 4. After dividing it by 4, whatever you get again, divide it by 4. So you still arrive at the same answer, which is 2.5 inches. So whatever you get depends on the size of your hip. So now I'll go ahead to place my curved rule, and I'll draw out my crotch curve at this point. So after I'm done marking this out, I'll go ahead to extend or outline this. Next step is to place your tape, and you're going to mark your waist to knee point. My waist to knee point is 21 inches, and I will go ahead to mark it out because we are going to be inserting our knee measurement at that point. So whatever we have here, we are going to measure it, and you're going to divide it into 2. That is from the crotch extension in front to the hip line, the end of the hip line. Whatever you have, you're going to divide it this way. Fold your tape and mark the midpoint. So measure from that midpoint to the end. That is what you're going to mark from the upper part of your trouser to the lower part, because you'll be dividing this into 2 equal parts because you want to place your measurements equally at both sides. So at the lower part, my pattern is a bit shorter, but the measurement I have at that point is okay for what I have there. So there's no cause for alarm. So I'll just go ahead and mark this. After I'm done marking, I'll just go ahead and draw out a straight line connecting all those marks. I started connecting the mark from my hip points all the way down, so I didn't connect it at the upper part. So I have my reasons for doing that. I want to insert my measurement in a way that it will align at both sides. So next, you're going to measure what you have on your tie line. So my lap is 25.5 inches plus 1 inch. I have 26.5, so that 26.5 I'll divide it by 2. Dividing it by 2, I have 13.25. So this 13.25 now, I'll share it equally on both sides of the line. So sharing it on both sides of the line, what I will have is 6.6. I'll mark the 6.6 here and then mark it at the other side. So it's approximately 6.6. So I'll mark it at both sides. So if you add it up, that will give you the measurement I have at the tie. So after I'll go over to my knee measurement. So the measurement I have around my knee is 17 inches plus my sewing allowance of 1 inch, making it 18 inches. So 18 inches divided by 2, you're going to have 9 inches. So that 9 inches, I'll be sharing it on both sides. So I'll place my tape at the middle of my 9 inches, which is 4.5 inches, and I'll mark 4.5 inches on both sides of the pattern. Going down to the lower part, what I have round my ankle is 13 inches plus 1 inch for sewing allowance will give me 14. So that 14 divided by 2, I have 7 inches. So the 7 inches now, I'll share it on both sides of the trouser, giving me 3.5 inches on both sides, and I went ahead to mark. So I'll just go ahead and use my ruler and marker to connect all my points and mark it out. So after I'm done marking this is just the front pattern of the trouser. So if you have any question, you can also leave the question at the comment section. And at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Going over to the waist line of this pattern, for the upper part, to mark my measurement, I'll go in by ½ inch first. This is to make sure that my measurement at the waistline balance between both sides of my trouser. Now I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4. Then I'll add 1 inch for my dart intake and extra 1 inch for my sewing allowance. So this way I'll connect it to the side and it will make my trouser not to have ear by the side. So go ahead to blend this out very well. So this is what I have after I'm done connecting, and I'm just going to go ahead to cut this out. So now I'll just go ahead and measure what I have around my crotch curve. For someone for hip 38-40, you should at least have up to 12 inches. So from 40 and above, you should have up to 13 to 14 inches. So from this part, I'll come down by ½ inch. So I'm just doing this so that the crotch part of my trouser will relax and I won't have any folding when I'm putting on my trouser. So you also want to remeasure your measurements at this part and mark back. Make sure it's exactly what you marked initially after drawing out that line on this part. So I'll just go ahead to cut this out. And next we'll be cutting out the back pattern of this trouser. So on this part of my trouser, at the upper part, I'll be adding a sitting or butt allowance at least 2 inches at the back of our trouser because of our butt allowance. So whatever you mark there, you also want to remeasure or mark your measurement to match what you have in front. So after marking, I'll connect this back to the trouser, but I'll go ahead to retake the measurements later. So for my trouser, I'll go ahead and mark extra 2 inches in front, and I'll go ahead to connect this. After I'm done connecting this, I'll be adding an extension of 2 inches at the crotch, at the front crotch part of my trouser, and I will mark. Then I'll go ahead to connect this. So after I'm done connecting this way, at this point I'll be marking 2 inches. So here I'll mark only 1 inch and then go down and also mark 1 inch to the end. This is just to make sure that the allowance we have at the back side of our trouser does not pop up by the side of our trouser when you're wearing it. So you notice that most times the back might turn or come out to the front. So this is why we're using a smaller allowance at this point, and I'll go ahead to connect. Then I'll go ahead and connect this all the way up to this side. So after connecting, I'll go back to the upper part of this trouser. Remember, just like I said, I'm going to remeasure what I have here. So the measurement I have on the actual waist of my pattern is supposed to be the same. So my waist is 28 divided by 4. I have 7 inches plus 1 inch for that and 1 inch for sewing allowance, so making it 9 inches. So I placed my tape back, then I placed my tape and I marked that 9 inches on the back waistline, and make sure it's connected to the actual waistline of our dress. Then I'll fold this up and connect it back to the hip part. So this is so that the front and the back pattern will be matching up. So whatever you feel you're taking out here will be replaced with that extension we have at the front part of the trouser, and I'll go ahead to cut it out. And this is also to avoid the trouser from having ear. So if you're confused on this part, you can go ahead to ask any question at the comment section. So I'll just go ahead and cut this, and after cutting this, I'll also go ahead to cut out the sides of the trouser, and this is what I have for my pattern. Now we'll move over to the shirt pattern. So for the shirt pattern, if you notice, before my measurements I added an extension in front, which is about 3 inches. So this extension is for your button allowance, so you can use 3 inches or 2.5 because you're going to be folding and top stitching it. Here's my shoulder to bust, here's my shoulder to waist, here is my blouse or shirt length, which is 24.5 inches. That's what I'm using for this shirt. Now I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder divided by 2 plus half. After marking that, I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope and I will connect. The next step you want to take is to mark out your basic neckline of 3 inches by 3 inches for this pattern. Place your curve through and you go ahead to connect. So after you're done connecting, you're going to find your chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I made a mark on that point and I'll draw out a straight line. Now I'll place that shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus half here. Go ahead to place my ruler and I'll draw out a straight line. After drawing out a straight line, I'm going to divide what I have here into 2 and I'll mark. After marking, I'll come out by ½ inch. Go ahead to place my bust circumference divided by 4 at this point. This is to draw out my armhole curve and I'll go ahead to connect. After I'm done connecting, the next step I will be taking is to go ahead to draw out or outline my pattern. Here I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and all my measurement is starting immediately after that line, and I'll add 2 inches. For the 2 inches, you can use 1 inch for sewing allowance and 1 inch for ease, or you can go ahead to use ½ inch for sewing allowance and 1.5 for ease. Totally depends on what you want to use. Here I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4 and I will add my sewing allowance. So because my waist is a bit small and I don't want my shirt to have that slim fit effect at the waist, I added extra 1 inch to my waist circumference. Here I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and I'll add my sewing allowance of 2 inches, which is 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. I'll go ahead and I will use my marker to outline, and this is what I have. So now you can go ahead to create a curve at the lower part, but I will leave it this way. So next, I want to have a come down for my shoulder and I will go down by 1 inch. So I will explain this more when I cut out the back pattern. I'll be replacing whatever I take out here from the back pattern. So if you don't want to do this, you can just join your shoulder pattern. You can join your pattern at the shoulder just like that, but I want to have a come down at the front part of my shirt, so which you can use 1 inch or 1.5 inches, and I'll go ahead to cut out. So after cutting out, this is what I have. So the next part is to cut out my back pattern. If you notice, I have about 1.5 or 2 inches above that before marking out this pattern. And here is my bust, here is my waist, and here is my shirt length. So the next step you want to take is your shoulder divided by 2, just like we did for the front, plus ½ inch, and I'll mark. Come down by 1 inch here and mark. Place my ruler and connect. So after marking, you want to mark your basic neckline of 3 by 1 inch, and I will connect this. So this is what I have for the back pattern, the back neckline, and I'll go ahead to outline. So next, you want to go ahead to find the chest line of your pattern, which we also did for the front, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. Mark that line out, mark what you have at the shoulder back again, and then go ahead to place your ruler to connect. So you can just leave this straight and draw like a curve at the lower part, or you can divide it just like we also did for the front part. So all you have to do is just to connect from your midpoint all the way to the chest line and to the upper part of the shoulder. And after I'm done connecting this, the next step you want to take is to start inserting your body measurements again. So at the bust, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add that same 2 inches for the front. Mark my waist circumference divided by 4, add that extra 1 inch and add 2 inches for my sewing allowance. Mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and add 2 inches also. So I'll just go ahead and I will connect my pattern. So this is what I have now, and I'll go ahead to connect it, and this is what my shirt pattern will be looking like. So at the upper part, whatever we took out, that's 1 inch, I'm going to go ahead to replace it. So go ahead and measure about 1 inch and connect. Measure what you have here, make sure that is exactly what you have on this part, and reconnect. Place your ruler and draw out a straight line. So this is what I have on this part of my shirt, and I will go ahead to cut this out. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. Also leave your comments at the comment section. So now I'll bring back my front pattern and I'll place it back. So if you notice now, the back and the front is matching up at the lower part of my pattern. So this is what you're supposed to have. Because of that come down that we removed from the front, we replaced it back. So now for this pattern, I marked my starting line, and for the total length of my sleeve is 11 inches. So what you want to do now is to go ahead to find your sleeve cap height, and to do that is your bust circumference divided by 12 plus 0.5. Mine is 3.25, which I marked a straight line at. Next step is to go ahead to mark your round armhole circumference divided by 2. Mine is 16. Divided by 2, I have 8, and I marked. From here, I'll connect from that point all the way to the tip of my pattern paper, and after marking this, I'll go ahead to outline it. So I'll place my tape on it now, and I'll be dividing it into 2. I'll fold my tape and I will mark. So from that line, I will divide each part into 2 and mark. After marking, I will come up by ½ inch from that mark I made, and I will mark it with my marker to make it more visible. So from the other side, I'll go ahead to divide it by 2, and I'll be coming down by ½ inch from that point. So after I'm done marking this, I'll go ahead to connect from the tip to the first mark that I have on that point. And after I'm done marking that, I'll connect it to the midpoint, then connect it to the lower part of that ½ inch, and then connect it to where I have my armhole circumference divided by 2. And I'll go ahead to connect this all the way down. So at this lower part, what I have round my sleeve at that point, I'll divide it by 2 and mark, then add 1 inch for sewing or seam allowance. So I'll just go ahead and connect. After this, I'll go ahead and add ½ inch on top, which will be serving as the joining allowance for this shirt pattern. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. If you find this video very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also join us in the sewing part of this tutorial. Thanks.